We have seen, just to kind of interject here a little, I was a detective for about 10 years when our numbers were closer to 10, 8, 9 a year, which for a city of 7 miles with 30,000, 36,000 is a lot. And where we have seen the decrease, and some of you that live on some of these fringes of some of the neighborhoods I know might not feel that, but where we have seen the decrease is our random, the drive-by, the guy getting shot in the middle of the night. We have seen a decrease in that. We're hoping that it's kind of a combined effort with parole and probation and some of the changes we've made administratively on how we're trying to track some of our more violent, more frequent offenders. So hopefully that's the change that we have seen. However, since the recession, we have seen an increase in domestic-related homicides, not just in our city here, but countywide. I know certainly you've all seen them on the news and everything like that. But this year, what we have seen obviously is the domestic, more related with the mother-daughter and that kind of stuff. The one that's unsolved, unknown. But our years past where we have some of those unsolved, those are the ones in our lower income areas where we do have a lot of our drug problems. And we're trying to work with not just HACA, but HACA, the courts, parole and probation to try and kind of combat and target those violent offenders. So at least we can bring those numbers down and keep them down. But like Corporal Miguel says, we do like to see the number at 0. So.
Yeah, and actually Mr. Brown was was supervised on probation at that time for violent offenses that did not include domestic. Well, I guess the one was. So he was on probation, classified as a violent BPI offender, Violence Prevention Initiative offender at the time. But there was no current charges against him with Ms. Sims or anything like that. So. Another major investigation we had this year that it culminated in June was Naptown Takedown, which was an operation that our drug enforcement unit did in collaboration with the ATF and Anne Arundel County, as well as Baltimore. I think that's all the divisions that were involved, but. They indicted 10 people on federal charges and 20 people on state charges, all for drug distribution and also selling firearms. And so far, all but one of those warrants has been served, and one, in fact, so far has just been found guilty of distribution of narcotics, possession with intent to distribute narcotics, and possession of drugs, not marijuana. He was found guilty in November. He's awaiting sentencing in January on state charges. All the rest are still pending. Their cases are still pending, but we're looking at that as hopefully going to send a message to the rest of the people awaiting prosecution that their charges will stick. It was a long investigation, started January 2012, and it was particularly targeted on the sale of illegal drugs and guns in the city. So, and then the brothel operation. This was actually a very long investigation, and the sentencing just happened in 2013. It all started. Sorry.
Yeah, where was the location of those, the drug-related takedowns?
They were all over the city, actually, and even sometimes, this all involved, confidential informants and, making sales, making buys, and so sometimes they actually met out of the city, sometimes they meet in the city. The people that were involved in the warrant, they did. For the main people, they did search warrants in Annapolis, off Brightwater. They did Harbor House. Was it Eastport Terrace too?
Eastport and
And Ben's Drive were the ones that actually the major ones that lived in the city that they did search warrants on immediately when they started this operation. The other ones were all over the place. They also did search warrants in Crofton that day for some of the people involved as well as Baltimore. So,
is that primarily heroin or marijuana or a combination?
It was crack, it was heroin, I think that was the main drugs. The main, federal warrants were, Ernest Harmon, Dante Harmon, Damian Brown, Jessica Node, Corey Flanagan, Jamolo Coates, and Don Juan Harmon. They're, the three are brothers, Ernest, Dante, and Don Juan. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I noticed that one of the areas you were reading, you described a charge or what they had taken in on the drug side, and you specifically said not marijuana.
Yes, that means any possession of, there are two different charges that you can be charged with. You're either charged with possession of CDS marijuana or possession of CDS not marijuana. So that could be, usually that is referring to crack, but it takes into account a range of drugs.
Oh, the seriousness, I mean, is there?
Possession is the lowest charge on that list. The biggest one would be the distribution of narcotics, and then the possession with intent to distribute narcotics. The simple possession charge is a misdemeanor.
Okay. And that's with the marijuana?
It's not marijuana.
That's not marijuana?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And then, so this brothel operation actually, the investigation into it started with a shooting and then a homicide. We had Hispanic victims, and that was not something that we had seen in Annapolis. And we were having a very difficult time getting a handle on it because of the community and us being unfamiliar with how it operated and what was going on. While investigating the homicide, we uncovered that the victim had been operating a service where he delivered girls to people for purposes of prostitution. We had a feeling it somehow related to his business, that he was killed. We discovered another gentleman operating brothels in the city and thought he might be related to the homicide. We started investigating that. Led to a very long investigation. The main subject was Herman de Jesus Ventura. He was a citizen of El Salvador. He was an illegal alien. He lived in Capitol Heights. Through the investigation, they were able to follow him, picking up girls in DC, bringing them out to houses in Annapolis, delivering them for the purposes of prostitution to these apartments where they would stay for a week. The girls would be watched by a man who also stayed in the house to make sure that they got their money and that they were safe and that the girls didn't leave. So these places were operated in apartments, in homes in Annapolis, usually rental properties. And we did get some community complaints about these places, the high traffic going in and out of the apartment, male traffic going in and out of the apartment, and that helped us locate these. Federally, Mr. Ventura was sentenced to 35 years in prison on these charges. These charges were related to him threatening to assault the prostitutes, threatening to assault competitors, other pimps that were bringing girls into the city, to maintain his prostitution business in the city, and also he had some business in Easton as well. His cohort, there's Herman de Jesus Ventura, and then we always knew Kevin Garcia Fuertes, we always knew him as Curlin Esquivel Fuentes. When we arrested him, he's a citizen of Honduras, also an illegal alien, and he was sentenced to over 19 years in prison on the charges because he helped Mr. Ventura run the brothels in Annapolis and Easton. Carlin is actually, has pending charges for the homicide that we had that started the whole investigation. His trial is scheduled to start in May. Yes, ma'am.
2 questions. Where are the apartment complexes located? And were the prostitutes, willing participants?
So there were a few different areas, and Joe can speak to this because he spoke to a lot of the prostitutes because he's our Hispanic liaison.
The prostitution basically stemmed from parole all the way into Eastport. There were houses that were being used that were near the post office. There were apartments on Madison, there were apartments on Carver Street. Over on South Villa, there were some apartments that were being used there. Bryson. And they were very mobile. We would get word of them one day, we would set up surveillance on them, and within a matter of days, they could move to another apartment complex, and we wouldn't, or another house, we wouldn't know because they would sign leases just like any tenant would. So we'd have to start surveillance all over again, figure out where they were going, and then when we would know where they were. Sometimes we'd have somebody who would call us up and say, hey, we're noticing some unusual things going on here. But I think they operated on Annapolis Walk for a while. We never did actually locate that house, but we heard that they were operating there as well. And your answer is no, they're not willing participants.
That was my question. Was that part of human trafficking? That was.
It is human trafficking.
What help and services were there for those young ladies? That's what what did you do with them?
We worked with our partners in ICE on it, and they use a group called the Polaris Project, where they actually debrief them. And by debriefing, I mean they bring them back to some sort of normal state, give them counseling, they teach them how to speak English, and they help them get established and get a job.
A lot of these women...
A lot of these women were illegal immigrants coming in, and somebody would befriend them, and they say, look, hey, how would you like a job? I've got this cleaning job.
Yes.
They would get them, they would take them there, and then they would push them into prostitution.
Or their boyfriends would say, if you want to see your child, you need to get money, you need to go work, and they would force them into it as well.
Sure. Thank
you. Yes, ma'am.
Was there a motive concern for the homicide?
It was trying to get rid of the competition.
Yeah.
Is basically what it came down to.
Yep. So,
yes, ma'am.
Once these people were found guilty and sentenced, but they're illegal aliens, are we paying to keep them in jail, or are they being deported?
Well, first they will serve their federal sentences here in the United States. Kevin has he's going to come up on the homicide. Harmon will also be coming up on homicide charges. If they're found guilty, they'll serve out their state time, and then they'll be deported. And you said, will we be paying for that? Yes, we will. And I would rather that we pay for it, because if we send deport them within a week, they can come back.
yeah.
So these guys are sitting in prison here in the United States, eating steak every Friday night and watching cable TV for 30 years.
If we send them back to Honduras or El Salvador, they will live like kings in the
These are violent people. They've killed people, they've put guns to people's head, pulled the trigger, and didn't even think a thing about it. I would rather guarantee that they're locked up here than they're back in my community within a week. Yes.
Is there a gang affiliation with those these guys?
In these particular two guys, we never could establish a gang affiliation. We know that they associated with gang members, but as far as being part of the gang, it was not. That was a private enterprise that they had solely for their financial gain.
I know there's a lot of MS-13.
There is a lot of MS-13. PG County has brothels at the wazoo that are MS-13 related. These guys would never tie back into that. We tried, could never find a link to them. Yes?
Do strong arm tactics extend to other industries?
Yes, but not in Annapolis. I mean, they'll put them in sweatshops of New York. A lot of times they'll put them in factories there. But here in this area, it's primarily in prostitution.